Yo, Aaron, man, I just lit up the Dominion Fuzz. First impressions? You did it. I think you really, really did it. Some of the issue with having the old ones is the inconsistency, and the value of these things have just gone up in value. The market is insane, and you know we hunt one of these things down because we want that vintage sound. We want that old sound, but you know this pedal has got miles on it. It's got years on it, and would it be as dependable? It may last forever, but what if something breaks? Then your heart breaks along with it because you know your essence of tone is gone. We've been friendly for a while. I think there was a time there where we went back and forth and traded off some DS pedals and messed with some stuff. And you had inquired about this my 66. This is well, one pot is October of 66 and another pot is August, I believe, of 66. So this is a really, really early old one. But there was something that this one had in it that I was chasing for, and you kind of learned me a little bit on it and let me know what it was I was looking for. You want to touch a little bit on that? Talk about that?
Yeah, sure, man. First of all, like I'm so happy to hear that you love the pedal.
It's
A
really
lot
great.
of time and effort goes into it, and a lot of tweakery. And it's always difficult to sell a pedal to somebody else um, when you're thinking about, am I translating the sound that they hear in their head here in my basement?
Don't get me wrong. I'm an advocate for fuzz pedals. I love fuzz pedals, and I've used them all. And surprisingly, I'm really inspired by, and this full disclosure, I'm really inspired by the Isle of Tone stuff because it has some older characteristics. And the only other thing besides yours, the Isle of Tone one, the only other pedal that I found to do what I was after, or to work in the way I wanted it to, was the old style MJM, the really old square big box. And they're up your way, aren't they?
Oh, Canada,
Yeah.
Montreal.
So there was something in there, and I kept trying to fish and ask questions and figure it out, and nobody could give me an answer. But apparently, you seem to know what's going on.
My philosophy has always been like trying to capture some of that vintage flavor in a more modernly built unit that's a little bit more robust on the inside, that would be able to sort of withstand some of that abuse. Now, I've like had the absolute privilege of like playing a bunch of different real ones, and a bunch of other great pedals. Like I've owned, I don't know how many different pedals over the last little while. Um, and I'm always interested about the ones that have kind of that special something to them. What is it that you're hearing, right? And for years, I definitely heard it in yours, even just playing over Instagram and watching live feeds and stuff like that. It had this like warm, boomy character to it, but
Yeah.
it was also kind of smooth in that really lends itself to your playing, right? I think that's the important thing, is it's very much the pedal and the player kind of come together.
Well, it's mostly probably why I favored it, because like I love the Cesar Diaz stuff, but at times anybody who spent time with those Cesar Diaz pedals, they can get really loud and really gainy and really bright, and just you can't control anything on them. You know, I'm big into getting a fuzz pedal to sound very organic. So what my ears told me, this has to be a low gain or something of the effect of lower gain, and there's more low end in this pedal. Volume, it doesn't have any real jump in volume, but I knew that there was great unity there. So some old fuzz pedals, you're playing, you go to step on it, and it kind of falls under the mix a little bit. And they can be in spec, but it's just a characteristic of fuzz face because you don't get that cut in the initial lift. This
Yeah.
one had a good bit of volume to it, not not outrageous to where it was like two different sounds. This pedal was very seamless in my playing, and I could fade it in and out. And a lot of the times with this 66 fuzz, I would just leave the pedal on and use the volume knob on the guitar because I was able to tune in every tone I wanted. And I spoke to you about that. I remember it in lengths, like, it's just got crazy low end, and you would think it's low gain. The bridge pickup still cuts like crazy, but the neck sounds warm and huge. Doyle is a big influence on me, and he had this color, and I thought that was cool at first, but like, see, being so young in my music and stuff like that, I was like, well, do the black ones have a different circuit? Like, I didn't know, because his was huge but warm, and the Welcome album is what got me hooked. And when I found this, it was all over. I had to have it, and it always did it. But I always wanted to replicate it because I wanted something that felt at home, but it was a little more dependable, but still did all those little quirks. I plugged this in. The only difference is, and hopefully I come across in the video when I'm doing some playing, this has a touch more output, and the fuzz pot, you get a little more range out of it. There's a little more usable range there, where this one's kind of just like, give her the beans and go.
Yeah. We talked about what it is that you had been out looking for. And I know that I kind of was like, I think I'm up to the challenge, man. Like, I think that I can take this on. I think I can deliver something that might be up your alley. And I know we talked at length. How long did we spend talking together? Just talking about like the neck pickup.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I know to me, I'm like, really? Like, it cuts on the neck, like show me. And we're jumping on live streams and stuff, and you're like, listen, like I'm trying to show you.
Yeah,
Because
like
normally when I voice the pedal, I want the neck to be so overwhelmingly big and boomy, because to me that says that it's going to rule on the bridge pickup. So to me, it was even a little bit of a challenge to kind of go outside of my comfort zone and kind of tweak and tailor a little bit to kind of. I'm really big into building a pedal for the individual player. So it's really about listening to what the player is looking for. And honestly, I feel like I play translator a little bit in that, you're talking about, oh no, it's definitely, clear on the neck pickup. It's not big and boomy. And I'm then trying to take that on my end and interpret what it is that you're talking about. And I remember when I built it and I kind of messaged you and was like, I think it's done, dude. And you kept saying like, no, man, like it's all good. Like take your time,
yeah.
just get it right. And I remember being like, I think it's pretty good. Like if you don't like it, you can send it back. It's like, but I think we're at that point now where it's time to send it over.
We also came to the assumption too, like when we were talking and I was sending you some audio back of stuff, you're like, you don't play it like a fuzz, like you play it like a jerk, like you're not really using it like a fuzz face. But
Yeah,
now I'm a Fender amp pushed to the moon. You don't have to use it like a fuzz face, because this, not necessarily your left hand, but your right hand and how hard you play brings out all those characteristics. And I remember you were steadfast. And how does your neck pickup do that? Is the neck pickup weak? Or we were going back and forth, and I said it's just the way it's unique. And I've probably had half a dozen old fuzz faces in my lifetime. And the only other one that was really cool, but I had too much gain, was a BC 109. But it was big and warm, which is a total departure from what they're supposed to be.
yeah.
So I just figured, like, all right, Nick, you're going to end up finding something that's like 75% close, and you're going to have to roll with that, which was cool because, I mean, it's not half bad to get that close to a vintage pedal and you don't have to worry about it. But man, I got to say, like, honestly, it does what the old ones do, but you get that little reassurance. You get a little comfort. It's cleaner. It's not finicky. It's not like, sometimes these old pots, you move them and they're just,
Yep.
but they won't, mess up the tone. And no matter how much deoxy you put in there, and no matter what you spray, and no matter how many times you jiggle something, it's just the way it is. So you really did it. You really did do it. And it's the woof and the warm character that I'm after, especially in a germanium transistor.
So I think an important note to make is that like your original fuzz is exceptional, right? Like it's one of the holy grail fuzz faces. It's an original 66 NKT 275 fuzz face, like what Jimi Hendrix used. It's what everybody's after, right?
Yeah.
But I think the important note to make here is that everybody these days, you've seen me talk about it, gets hung up on transistors. You hear NKT 275, this and that, and it's the only one that sounds good, and that's the best. And that's, to me, what you're buying into with these pedals, and you're paying astronomical sums of money for them, is like provenance. Like
Tagline.
you're buying into the history, because your fuzz face is an AC 128 fuzz face.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And yet we can play them side by side. And I know sometimes we have a hard time telling which is which. Yeah. So what's more important, your eyes or your ears? One of them is what the internet tells you is the only thing in the world to have.
Right.
And the other is something that you might read articles that say, these are no good. There was definitely a lot of time where, like, I know that even you were saying, hey, I've never really dug into my old one before and spent a lot of time sort of measuring values and making assumptions, because those that know circuits know that you can't necessarily tell one for one what a part is when it's in circuit. But I know that we sat down with a couple originals and were kind of, to make a pun, riffing ideas off each other about like, oh, wow, like yours is at this, like that might have something to do with what it is that, we're hearing, and how do we replicate that? Because even just saying, hey, I'm looking for big and warm, there are like surface level things that you can do to kind of impart that element of the sound. But it almost feels like it's one of those balancing acts where, you know, you increase one part, but then you lose on the other end.
Right.
And so it's sort of like, how do you find that healthy compromise between is steering it in a direction, but not losing all the character that you're looking to hold on to? So I'm really happy we took the time to do this. It really influenced the way that I build them. Like, even ever since I've changed some things in the way that I build them, I think that there's opportunity there maybe in the future to look at things like limited runs, where maybe we could take some of the stuff that we've put together and maybe see if there's people that would be interested in kind of, again, remember, it's about the player and it's about the style of playing and the ability to use it in a similar fashion. But there might be people out there that, you know, what we're talking about resonates with them and their playing. And so maybe there would be opportunity in the future to be able to do, you know, runs of that pedal or something like that, right? Depending on parts and all the things that, you know, we need to acquire to build these types of pedals.
I mean, for sure. I don't know. You know, all I can play is what it sounds like through a basic super reverb, two 20-foot cables, and a Strat. I had 2 points I wanted to touch on with you because they were stuck out in my mind. Now, without giving away any secrets, I remember when we were going over values. Like we had actually sat down, put up FaceTime, and we were just going over everything. And I was going through my entire pedal. I remember you kind of had like oh, like an aha moment there. And we don't have to give away what it was or, you know, anything like that. But did that make sense? Or did it all of a sudden say, that's why this is doing that? You know,
There's
and
a certain amount of like, I always think back to like the legend of, you know, we've all heard this story before. Jimi Hendrix walks into a guitar shop and says, give me every fuzz face that you have or every wah wah that you have, and I'm going to play every one of them, and then I'm going to walk out with the one that I like the most.
yeah,
Right. And like, there's no secrets there. We kind of know, you know, why some of that may or may not be. Um, but there was definitely in both of our pedals. Like, I've owned a couple different like originals and stuff, and it's interesting when you find certain ones that you're like, wow, this one's got the juice. Over the course of like trying different ones, you start noticing sort of like correlation between all these ones seem to have similar character traits,
okay.
right? And then you start cluing into like, that might be part of, you know, what it is that people are just like by happenstance they're falling into and saying, wow, this one's special for whatever reason. um at least for players like us, and I'm thinking Fender amps, Stratocasters, like,
Yeah.
right, there's definitely a gumbo that exists of parts that are kind of piecing together, where it's certain elements that really complement those types of setups, that you don't necessarily get in a regular build, because like in some instances it might be considered like
I
wrong.
use a treble bleed in my guitars, okay? Because again, when I became somebody who was just leaving the fuzz on because it worked, you know, it was easy for me to get all the sounds I was looking for by just leaving it on and dialing in the volume knob. So what I found with yours is, and I know we've also gone back and forth with different values and trying to make a test bed and doing all this stuff and hanging paper clips out. I mean, hanging alligator clips out and trying to figure it out. But I noticed that I had to modify the treble bleed, even though the tone difference between the two pedals was so minor. But I'm wondering why that was, and if that's something you want to talk about or not. And also, because I've always been a proponent of don't design the treble bleed around, don't design your rig around a treble bleed. You know,
Yeah,
you want the guitar and the rig working. You know, everything else should be an added color on top of it.
the treble bleed is the salt and pepper on top of your, you know, soup, so to speak.
Yeah.
um I know that like treble bleeds are funny things, right? Because like in general, if you think about, I know we've talked before, we've done a video on your channel about like fuzz and wah and why they sometimes don't interact together based on which order they're in, so on and so forth. So with a guitar and a fuzz face with the like impedance of the fuzz has a really unique interaction, and that's what we all love, right? With the cleanup and all that stuff. But the treble bleed is embedded in that kind of direct line, right? So any new fuzz, like safe to say that my fuzz is different than the 66. It might have similar tonal characteristics, but part values and all that inside are different.
Yeah.
Um, and so that interaction that might be existing there, right, probably needed to be tweaked in order to sort of realign it with what it is that you heard on the other one. Or maybe you heard, I think a certain element of it too is maybe there's a certain, we talk a little bit how my pedal has a little bit of something different.
Yeah. It just has a little more top end.
And so you might be looking to also compensate for that, right? You might be saying, okay, if this is what I now have, what elements do I want to pull out of that, right? I know you were talking to me and we went back and forth about, oh, I just a little bit extra like bite and brightness.
Yeah.
Like, I'm talking just a smidge, right? Like it's that dash of pepper. And I know that we said like, may sound silly, but change this value by, X small number.
Yeah.
And then maybe you'll get what you're looking for. And sure enough, a little bit of back and forth. And that's a message to everybody, right? It's really about
It was only
finding your own sauce.
I remember I was like, I ended up nailing it. And you're like, oh, what'd you get? The same one I had in there.
Actually,
I just modified one resistor by 20K.
hey man, like I want to emphasize though that like the secret ingredient is like love, right? Like you get this kind of stuff by paying all sorts of time and attention and nitpicking over parts, and right, you can't just throw one of these together. Unfortunately, like I wish I could line them up and make 100 of them in one day, right? But like it doesn't work that way. You really need to, I think I flipped in and out maybe 10 different transistor sets to even find a combination that I liked the sound of before I then went and then kind of used them as the car chassis, so to speak, to then build the hot rod around. You know what I mean?
What inspired you with Dominion Fuzz to kind of, because I think I have the message from you that says, screw it. I'm thinking about just buying a bunch of components and building my own. I literally have that message. And that was in 2021. That was just this last year.
Like right around January last year.
So what was it with in your experience, like, and granted, if you're a guy building stuff, you're gonna push your product, and there are other fuzzes that are great. That's not what this is. This, we both know that there are other people building fuzz pedals that are amazing, right? But what was it about your fuzz journey that something always seemed to fall short?
Well, like first and foremost, there are a million amazing builders out there, and to be honest with you, the best thing about this community is how willing almost everybody is to like share information and bounce ideas off of you. Like I can't tell you how many times I've, what's influenced me is I've been hearing something and saying, I'm chasing this and I can't seem to figure it out. And I've had amazing calls with great builders who have been willing to say, I don't know if I have the answer for you, but like you can try this, or you can try that, or maybe experiment with these types of things, or here's something that I like to do in my build, so on and so forth. Everybody has been incredible. So like those of you or those out there that have really helped influence Dominion Fuzz and what it is, I'm like eternally thankful for all of you, because I wouldn't be where I am without it. So like to kind of go to the genesis of it is that like I had built pedals and rigs and stuff since I was much younger, playing in bands in my 20s and stuff. I've always loved the fuzz face. My story's kind of on my page a little bit. But what I had a hard time doing was, it was a combination of two things, right? It's kind of like what we were talking about. It's kind of that extra something that's kind of hard to describe, but you know what it is and when you hear it and you keep trying different pedals and for whatever reason they just lack that intangible something. And the other side of it was the unobtainability of real ones, right? Like real ones are hard to come by now, um, and they're very expensive, and they're not always great, right? And they're not always in perfect condition. They've often got replaced parts. Like it's very difficult to find an old one. And so there's part of me that kept sitting around saying, "Oh man, I really want a fuzz face." And I want it in the right shell, and I want it to have the right aesthetic of an old one, but I can't seem to find it anywhere, right? And so it was kind of like, what's the expression is like necessity is the mother of all invention,
Right.
right? And so it's kind of it was a little bit of that. It was like, come on, like I can do this, and then at least if I'm picking parts, if I don't like it, I only have myself to blame, right? Like I can always then make changes. I'm not buying something off another builder and then saying, "Hey, I'm dissatisfied for whatever reason because I have a personal preference." And then, trying to hold them accountable to like it's kind of like what we're talking about. Like I don't know what you're hearing. I'm making assumptions.
Yeah.
I just like to think that I can translate a little bit of what it is that you're looking for. I think I've spent enough time speaking guitar hyperbole to get when you're saying, "Oh, I just want that like woody warm sound," that I can say, okay, I think I've mucked around enough to kind of know what direction I think I need to go in. So really that's the genesis of it. And that it's wild how it's gone from me saying I'm gonna trust my own ears to do what I need to do to like now where I have kind of other people who trust me to do it for them. I can't believe I've made like the amount of fuzzes that I have.
I think mine's number 84.
Yeah, I'm getting close to 100. Um, and I've made some really cool ones. I like to think that I put a lot of time and attention into. Um, and so I'm starting now to explore how do I take everything that I've learned and everything that I love about the circuit and things that I've tweaked and maybe like move it into something that's a little bit more my own, right? It's a little less tribute to something. I still have the ability to do that, and I've made a bunch of them that are kind of now out there. I've contributed to that community. But is there now an opportunity to say, all of you guys that now trust,
Yeah.
what I hear, can I now sort of, I don't want to say make it better, but make something a little bit more unique that kind of is on that same road, right?
I,
Um,
I think that's big with guitar players too. I think it's the word you use, trust, is really big because, like, I know many of the guys that are deep into the tones and stuff like that. They're simple creatures, and once they find what works, you know, like for me, it's Tommy Cougar. If I want, he was the only guy that I've been able to say, I'm looking for this sound. Get the amp, here, Nick, recommend doing this, this, and this, and it'll get you there. Boom. That,
but the funny thing about it though is that I've told a lot of people it doesn't make any one builder any better than anybody else. It's literally I use analogies of like sports teams and stuff. Like growing up, you're playing baseball or basketball or whatever as a kid. Most people have had like one coach or one teacher or one whatever that really resonated with them for whatever reason. You got to find your guy, right? Your guy or gal or whoever it is, right? You got to find your person that gets you, right? And then that relationship allows you, if you turn around to me and said, "Hey, all right, bud, like silicon, what are we gonna do?" Right? I already kind of understand where you're coming from and what you're looking for, and so if we wanted to make it a bit different, we're speaking the same language,
well,
right?
can we do a silicon then? I'll do big great news, breaking news right here on the channel. I want to replicate my I had a silicon fuzz that was owned by a really famous player that has some unique characteristics, and it was warm for a silicon fuzz, and that's probably That's probably what I'm chasing is the warmth. Being a Fender amp player,
Yep.
I don't want fuzzes to sound like, oh, nails on a chalkboard, you know?
But you also push the amps.
We're gonna do some filming in the video, but some of the characteristics of, say, this is the neck pickup punch, but also clarity. Like, bridge pickup. That's no volume rolled off, but when you slide up, so that's just the pedal on. So if I take the old one and let's see if I can match the fuzz amount. Like it's very low endy and buckety, like it.
I think mine probably has a little bit more gain.
What's that?
I think mine has a little bit more gain.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. All like the roll off. So it still retains that overdrive. Just back it down a little bit.
It's funny. It's funny though because like even just, and I know that we're over a Zoom call and whatever, but like to me, my ears, I think the old one has a little bit more mellowness in the roll off.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think mine has a little bit more of
Aggression.
I don't want to say the name, but it has a little bit more of that like aggression to it, like a little bit more kind of gnarliness, a little bit more edge.
Now the old
in
one's
the roll off.
more tame when you start rolling off, and I think that's why I needed to adjust the treble bleed because
I agree.
it was in the roll off, and I was saying, okay, the old one gives me a little more brightness because it's taken away some of the fuzz character and just giving me pure tone. But that could be anything from the pots in the fuzz face for
Of
the
course.
action of the guitar there. So to me, the fuzz tone, you know, and I'll take yours right now and try to plug it in again. See, but that could all be in the actual. Dude,
Pretty damn close.
Close. So, I mean, I know this is just through a Zoom call, but I'm going to run through both of them. I'm going to keep switching back and forth. But this is insane. Fucking wild, man. So I'm going to put the link right down here, or the to Aaron's page. And if you want to see what the Haps is, new updates, new creations, new tones in the fuzz world, please go give him a subscribe, a like, a follow, a share, a private message, whatever you want to do. Just keep it PG. But Aaron, man, as a buddy who, you know, we've thought about, yeah, we'll go rent out a hall and we'll bring all the gear and we'll try our best to tune everything in.
We're still going to do it, man.
But we were able to do it, you know, I got to say 95% of the way there. Over the moon. Hopefully this video illustrates how great the pedal is. And anything else you want to say to anybody watching and checking it out?
Hey, man, just thanks for checking out the page. Thanks for following along. It's been a journey, and happy to share more as we move forward.
All right, Aaron, man, thank you so much. And yeah, we're going to be talking, you know, quite a bit. We'll probably talk a little bit after this, but I appreciate it so much, dude. And
cheers, man. Hey, I'm so happy to be able to make something that you dig.
Thanks, buddy. We'll talk soon. Peace.